Fascinating? Eccentric? Bizarre? Nobody can ignore the sight of a vintage car travelling sedately down the modern highway. Lovingly restored, driven with pride, shunning that modern love affair with speed and power. We greet the old lady with waves and smiles, and perhaps a little envy. This is an 1895 Benz Velo, single-cylinder, 100mm bore, 1045 cc. Top speed, 30 kilometres or 18 3/4 miles per hour. At the wheel, Sir Len Southward, a New Zealander whose passion for motors and machinery has taken him down many roads. A man whose hobby has become a legacy that will continue to fascinate generations to come. This is the story of Len Southward, the machines he loves, and the museum he's built to contain them. To sum up Len Southward in a few simple words is impossible. He has an appetite for everything mechanical, whetted by a passion for motorbikes and a love of speed.
Mile record attempt, I think I did 112, but that was on Jack Arnott, the Harley frame, the racing Harley frame with the Jap engine in it. But then after that I put the Jap engine into the bike I called the Harley by Southward, which was a road job.
He's enjoyed the mental challenge that machines give him, the need for simple and ingenious answers to complex questions. Over the years, he's flirted with danger without actually seeing that it existed.
Fear never worried me one little tiny bit. As I said, I can't swim, but I always had a jacket on.
He's wrestled with changes in lifestyle, developed a flourishing business, supported an array of worthy causes, and been a pioneer in the New Zealand vintage car movement.
I think from memory now, he advertised it for £35, and when I'd listened to his tale of woe and what it had cost him, he'd put it together from all sorts of bits, and it actually cost him over 40, and I finished up giving him £40 for it, but I've threatened to cut his throat many times since. That started the rot.
Like a magpie, Len has become addicted to collecting things.
I don't know, it just grew. Sort of, well, I mean, we've had a successful business in that respect, as far as the financial side's concerned. I don't know, it just grew, in that respect.
Len Southward has become that rare and lucky man whose work became successful enough to allow him not only to indulge his enthusiasms, but to give support and pleasure to others. Sir Len Southward was knighted in 1986 for services to the community. All these aspects of his life and character are reflected in the Southward Museum at Paraparaumu, New Zealand, housing one of the largest and most varied collections of motor vehicles in the Southern Hemisphere. Len Southward was born in Wellington on the 20th of September 1905, the younger son of Philip and Elizabeth Southward.
My father died when I was 5, and my mother kept about 8 boarders during the First World War, I think for 18 shillings a week. Washing, mending, darning, everything, even cut lunches.
A bright student, Len attended Te Aro School, but the hard times at the beginning of World War I saw many young men cut short their education.
I went to technical, night school, but when I went to the workshops, and I only went to the workshops, they wouldn't let me go to the workshops because I didn't go to the other classes. I wasn't interested in grammar and geography. So I really finished school, when I started work at 13.
His first job was in a motor warehouse. Then he moved to a garage where he worked with cars. But it was motorbikes that really took his fancy.
And but in that time I'd got interested in motorbikes. And then I got offered a job at Rogers and Hall's, which I took for double the wages I was getting at Alf. But Alf put my wages up, but I still wanted to get onto bikes. And I was only there about 3 months. And then I went to Southern Rank and Indian agents. And that was, it would be 23, 4, 5, 6. And then Jack Pettingill and I started on our own in 1926.
Len went into partnership with Jack Pettingill, repairing motorbikes and cars, and in his spare time indulging himself in his new toy, an AJS Bigport.
I bought a new 2 3/4 AJS, the 1924 2 3/4 AJS, which is a Bigport job. We do have one in the museum, and that was pretty good. I think I did 80 mile an hour on the beach with that one.
The AJS Bigport was one of the most successful 350cc motorcycles of the early 20s, with a maximum of 2 3/4 horsepower. It was a great source of pleasure for Len.
Because most of the racing then was on the mile grass tracks. No chains, no knobbly tyres or anything like that. Of course, we used to have quite a bit of fun with hill climbs too. I used to like the grass hill climbs. We used to go up by the Wellington Girls College, top end of Patterson Street up Mount Victoria there, and we used to put chains around the back wheel then.
Resulting from his work with Sutherland and Rankin, Len developed a particular fascination for the Indian motorcycle.
Indians were probably more popular in a way than Harleys, but they had more models. But the spring frame Indian, which is the bike 1924 spring frame Indian, was when I got bent up on at Levin, that they were very good riding bike, and they were quite a good job. They had a spring frame, like a later model bike, so the back wheel was sprung as well as the front.
Riding bikes in the 1920s was the great social experience.
And we'd take the bikes, take the inside footrest off, and at the time I think I then got into a 24 or 25 Chev Tourer car, and we used to put 2 bikes, one on each running board, with the wheels up in the front between the headlamps, and go away motorcycle racing.
The large collection of motorbikes exhibited here at the museum stems from the enthusiasm engendered during these years. Over 70, ranging from the oldest one in the collection, a 1906 FN, to a 500cc Suzuki racing bike and a 1988 BMW. Here are the British greats: Norton, AJS, Triumph, BSA, the German BMW, Harley-Davidson, and the Indian, American classics. This Harley dates back to 1915 and developed 4.3 horsepower, which was pretty good for that time. A walk along the motorbike floor is a source of fascination for anyone with a sense of history or an interest in the unusual. The 1932 Brough Superior Straight 4 and sidecar, for instance. It's powered by an Austin 7 4-cylinder engine and includes such unusual features as twin rear wheels, a propeller drive shaft with crown wheel and pinion, and 3 forward and 1 reverse gears. Only 11 were built, so this is one of the rarest bikes in the world. The bikes are grouped by make, these AJS models ranging from 1924 to 1964. The Black Beast central in this picture is perhaps the most unusual bike in the collection. It was custom built and has a Ford V8 390 cubic inch water-cooled engine and fluid flywheel. Motorbikes seem to encapsulate the dynamic energy and entrepreneurial skill of the 21-year-old Len Southward. Len took over the business and looked for new challenges.
When we started out, I think we both put in £50 each, which was quite a bit of money, and I had to sell the bike. I had to get it. And then when we broke up, I think it took me a week. If I remember right, I did a job on a Henderson, which was £3.15 and sixpence, and that's what I opened an account for in my name. That's all. I had to wait a week to get that to open an account. That's with the National Bank, actually, and I've been with them ever since, so we don't ask them today, we tell them.
Well, he was a perfectionist. Everything had to be dead right, and anything he did at all. I remember one stage we had midget cars out here, and there's a chap from England, I think, at the time, Reynolds, and he had a four-wheel drive speed car. But he never went properly on the track. So I come into Len and said, well, what can you do about it? And Len stripped this thing down, laid it all out on paper, and reassembled it, and there's nothing could catch it.
The growth of Southward engineering stems from Len's energy, drive and perfectionism. What was a small motor garage expanded in new directions, stimulated by the restrictions in the marketplace brought on by the Second World War. Today's successful Australasian enterprise sprang from an inventive reaction to import controls.
Import control, of course, had come in, and quite a lot of gear you couldn't get. A lot of things were short. And I went round it was Barney Allen, manager of Vesta Battery Company, said to me one day, talking to him, he said, well, I think it's better to make something new than to repair something second-hand. He said, well, I'm talking to you. He said, my chaps are making money for me. But he said, well, a friend of mine in Sydney got a garage. He said, well, he stops talking. He's not doing anything. And that, together with the shortage, sort of prompted me to have a look around the warehouses, which I did. And I went around the warehouses to see what was short, and rear vision mirrors were short, truck rear vision mirrors. So I got hold of one and bought a second-hand press, I think, for about £20, and with a friend, Norm Brash, who's a toolmaker at DP Fisher's, who made piston rings, we made up the dies and things, and I took one of the mirrors around the warehouse, and instead of selling 500, I sold 1,500. But I could only get tube for 500. And I said to Norm, how do you make tube, Norm? He said, I don't know. He said, I think you drag a strip through a hole. So we dragged a strip through a hole. I think I paid £2 for an old worm drive off an elevator, off a lift, and connected it up with another Harley gearbox and things, and we pulled the strip through a hole and welded it by hand. That's how we started making tube.
With such invention and innovation, Len's reputation as an engineer grew throughout Australasia.
I remember he went over to Australia to see someone over there at one stage involved in tube making, and they kind of treated him as a bit of a yokel, I think. He goes down this line with this chap, and they're saying, we're having a bit of trouble with something here, I don't know what it was now, but he said, oh yeah, I said, why don't you do such and such? Oh, I never thought of that. After that, he was well received.
Somebody said to me, he said, you want a rolling mill for making tube, instead of that. And I said, what's that? I went down to the library and had a look to see what it was. And then we made up units and rolled the tube then. But I didn't know anything about it, but I went down to the library to have a look to find out what a rolling mill was. Today, if you did want 1 million feet a week, we could give it to you.
The factory today makes a huge range of tubing. Its stainless steel production is used extensively throughout the economy. Southward Engineering has become one of the largest suppliers of exhaust tubing to the automotive industry. By the end of the war, the business was well established, and Len was looking for new challenges. His passion for speed found a new outlet, on the water, with a boat that was to become a legend. Powered by a V12 Allison Aero engine, 28 litres in capacity, producing 1,400 brake horsepower, for 10 years the Redhead captured the imagination of the country.
Redhead dates from 48 to 58, I think. But a couple of years before that, I don't know, I just started playing around. I think I got a Jeep motor and put it in a little small boat. In fact, Jack Hogan, he was building a boat too, which he called Cracker Jack. And every time you saw him, he says, I don't know how it'll be, sort of style, but I hope it doesn't turn out a fizzer. I built a boat, and mine porpoised I didn't build it, but I had it built for me, and to a design that we thought was all right. And it porpoised, it just did everything wrong, so I called it the fizzer.
In 1956, at Point England in Auckland, Redhead set a new Australasian water speed record of 109.9 miles an hour.
I think the challenge was, well, the Massport Cup was a challenge to win in that way, and I think that was what came in after the fizzer days in that respect.
The Massport Cup was the symbol of speedboat racing supremacy in Australasia during the 1950s and 60s.
In Aussie, the biggest shock I got over there was after, I think the Griffiths Cup was run then in 3 heats, and I got I won 2 heats, and when they presented the trophy, I got the shock of my life. I'd never seen it before, but it was a big trophy with 3 mermaids holding the cup up, and a real beautiful thing.
9 wins in 10 years. The one loss, the result of an organisational glitch.
Except for 1 year between 49 and 59, I think I held both trophies, but I missed out on one Massport Cup win because they had 2 checkered flags on the course, and I pulled out at the first checkered flag, and I should have pulled out at the second. Well, they shouldn't have never had 2 checkered flags.
The end for Redhead was as swift and dramatic as its success had been.
But at Picton, the wife was on the wharf, and somebody said, "Oh, the Redhead stopped." And her immediate reaction was, she said, "Oh, the Redhead doesn't stop," but it did.
Here it is, still as it stopped. While racing in the Marlborough Sounds, travelling at 110 miles an hour, the maximum revs of 9,400 proved too much for the propeller. Metal fatigue caused it to shatter, and a section smashed through the hull, spelling the end of Len Southward's domination of water sport in Australasia. But Len had new challenges in mind and was ready for a change. He fell for a 1915 Model T Ford in a somewhat neglected condition.
This is the car that caused all the trouble, as I say. We'd been to a trip to England in 1955, and when we were there we saw the finish of a veteran car rally, and that really looked impressive to me. And when we got back, a month or 2 later after that, this was advertised for sale by chap Neil Whittaker in Lower Hutt, and in a weak moment I bought it. £40 was paid for it, but it still goes, it still runs, but it's pretty rough, but it won't get restored because look at the trouble it caused.
7 years later, Len took his fully restored 1904 Wolseley Tourer to London and competed in the London to Brighton Rally, the curtain raiser to many such trips. More successful in 1985 with his 1895 Benz Velo than New Zealand's first challenge for the America's Cup, according to one cartoonist. As the Southward vintage car collection increased, the problem of storage became increasingly apparent.
He started off with a small museum at the factory in Lower Hutt, which he used to let out to different organisations. They would come and clean the cars, charge an entry fee, and that entry fee would go to their funds. He never got any money off that. Then he decided that he needed a new place, and he came to Parapram to look. And also further up past Waikanae, but this site here was the one that he really liked. Had a lot of trouble getting a permit to build. We had a lot of objections from neighbours that a car museum wouldn't be the sort of thing to have in this area. But eventually we got through all that and got it built.
These sketches illustrate the original concept. Earthworks began in 1975 with the shaping of the 6 hectares of land and the preparation of the grounds, gardens and picnic areas, and the man-made lake that focused the eye on the exhibition hall. Every detail planned and supervised by Len.
I think it's more the man that built it's a special thing about it. The way he designed it, the way he supervised the building of it. I think that's probably the unique part of it.
Len Southward brought all his energy, engineering and business skills to bear on the project. The result is a complex that not only houses the collection superbly, but captures the essence of the man. The museum complex was opened in 1979 and has been a successful tourist attraction ever since. The main exhibition hall covers 4,400 square meters and features hundreds of exhibits in optimum conditions for viewing. And it's not just motorbikes and cars that are on exhibition here. This is a replica of the Blériot monoplane that crossed the English Channel in 1910. This replica was featured in that comic film classic, Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines. This is the 1950 vintage de Havilland Vampire bomber. And this, the popular Tiger Moth, a trainer used by air forces throughout the world during World War II. The collection is obviously irreplaceable, but if there's a fire, there's no shortage of fire engines to be found. Vintage, of course. But it's the cars around which everything revolves, and particularly one special exhibit.
This is an 1895 Benz, which was brought to New Zealand by Mr. Nicholas Oates from Christchurch about 1900. And in fact, the number on the back is the 1986 London-Brighton run when we took it over there. But that's the steering and the gear change levers, spark control and throttle control. In fact, it might even start up. Better try it. That's the advance and retard. The throttle is there. And of course, if you've got anybody in the way, well, probably this way.
If you're lucky, you may see one of the exhibits in action. This 1904 Wolseley Tourer, for instance.
You've got to drive that one with your legs crossed. Clutch pedal's on the right-hand side. The only way I can drive it is to use my left foot on the clutch pedal, sort of crossed over a bit, and keep my right foot out of the way and use the handbrake. But if you start using the brake and the clutch pedal, you really get in a hell of a mess.
Most vehicles are in running order and are occasionally taken out for a spin. The Tourer, the first New Zealand car to take part in the London to Brighton Rally, has a 1600cc 8-horsepower engine. These cars were extremely successful in hill climbs and endurance races in their day. It was restored to showroom condition by Len Southward in 1962.
Well, we built a new body for it as well. The body was rebuilt. Even the lino on the floor and the doors was a sort of a dark red with a lighter red 4 or 5 dot flower frame type of thing. Well, we even silk screened those on.
The Clermont Talbot dates from 1909. It was the result of a manufacturing agreement between the French Clermont and English Talbot companies to jointly manufacture automobiles in England. It cruises at 40 miles an hour with a top speed of 50 miles an hour. This vehicle was a taxi in Wanganui and was later converted into a truck before coming into the collection, since when it's been subject to extensive restoration. But for an old-timer with speed, this 1915 Stutz Indianapolis special race car takes the prize. It's the most popular exhibit in the collection. The car was brought to New Zealand in 1923 and raced by Bob Wilson, who drove it to victory in the New Zealand Cup in 1926, 27 and 28. Later, the engine was used in a speedboat, while the chassis, with another engine, was used as a farm tractor. Engine and chassis were reunited when the car was restored by the museum.
This is a 1915 Stutz, Indianapolis Stutz. There was only 3 of them built for the Indianapolis 500, and this ran third in 1915 and ran second as a Durant Special in 1919. But in 1915, it won the Astor Cup race, 350 miles at an average of 102, and that wasn't bad going in 1915. I mean, if you have a look at your motor, you'll notice that it's a 4-valve head, and it raced in Auckland on the beach races for many years, but Bob Wilson drove it. And the crankcase, if you notice the crankcase, is bronze, and the original one was aluminium, but that cracked up, and this one was made in Auckland, and it's been going ever since. The crankshaft is on ball bearings too, by the way, but it really, really runs well. We did a complete restoration on it when we did it up, and we did get quite a few of the original photos from the Indianapolis 500, and there's things like the straps on the springs on the bonnet catches, and the gas tank caps and things, which we copied to try to make it, because all that gear had been taken off and wrecked in its lifetime, because it did have a pretty rough spin. There's one thing that's a bit different on this than any other car I've ever seen, and that's these hand pumps here. I mean, the top pump, that's just normal. That pressurises the gas tank, which you pump up to about 1.5 or 2 pounds. But these two pumps here, the motor is lubricated with ordinary oil in the sump, but also there's one of these tanks, there's a spare oil tank, and the top pump takes the hot oil out of the sump, puts it in the tank, and the bottom pump takes the colder oil out of the tank and puts it into the sump. And that's the only one I've ever seen that on. But it certainly makes a difference for long distance running, because it can pull the temperature of the oil down. But it's in, as you can see, when we restored it, we did practically everything to it. But it is a very good going car, and I don't mind demonstrating it at times.
This Model Zero Tipo dates back to 1914 and was built by the industrial giant Fiat. It was the smallest of the Fiat car range at the time, and only 2,000 of them were built between 1912 and 1915. Its price when new was 920 New Zealand dollars. It's powered by an 1850cc 4-cylinder engine, which produces 16 brake horsepower. In the museum, the Fiat Zero Tipo stands proudly beside many classic cars of its generation. The 1912 Buick Tourer Model 35 was described as the highest grade, medium-priced four-door touring car offered this season. This car is a classic example of Len Southward's skill as a restorer, and was the overall winner of the 1965 International Rally. This is a 1910 Humber Roadster. Humber began life as a bicycle manufacturer and switched to making motor vehicles in 1898. The Roadster was an early attempt by Humber to produce a cheap, high-quality car. The Maudsley Phaeton is a British vehicle which dates from 1913. The overhead camshaft and direct valve action was patented in 1903 by Maudsley, and the principles continue to be used by many engine manufacturers. This is another example of an engineering firm keen to make the switch from steam and horse-drawn carriages at the turn of the century. Picture these cars driving the roads of the time. We can still see the images in the early films of Buster Keaton, the Crazy Gang, the Keystone Cops. This was when good old car chases were invented as entertainment, good old car crashes, good old panel beaters. In another location beside the museum, a team of skilled tradesmen are steadily restoring a backlog of rare vehicles destined for exhibition.
Oh, it's a bit on the difficult side, but you do the best you can. And there's one thing about it, there's really nobody that can come along and say, that's not right, because they don't know any more about it than you do. And, after all, my experience with cars only goes back to early 20s, but that is 65 years ago.
This is a place of specialist knowledge and traditional craftsmanship. Those working here are part engineer, part carpenter, part panel beater, part magician. finding parts, making parts, seeing how things fit, getting machines as accurate as they can be, something like a century after they were built.
In that 1915 Stutz racing car, the only original gears in that is the reverse idler, and I think one of the timing gears in the camshaft or something. But other than that, we made the whole shebang there. We never cut the gear teeth ourselves, but Bentley's did that down here, who specialise in it. But even the crown wheel and pinion, is a local one.
Bodies can be stripped back to the basics. Restoration can take months, even years.
There's a lot of work in doing them, but there is a lot of satisfaction, when you've got them done. Common thing, too, is when you've done them up, it's not unusual to have a bet on, first or second pull on the handle to start them. Because after all, they should start instantly if you've done the job right.
Look around the museum and you're sure to find the unexpected. Alternative energy sources were used by car makers as early as 1905. American manufacturers Roush and Lang had plenty of experience by the time they built this electric town coupe in 1918, with its luxury interior and steering tiller. The car had a maximum range of about 50 kilometres between charges and could travel at speeds up to 30 kilometres per hour. Note the non-skid tyres. This 1920 Stanley was at one time holder of the world's speed record, and it was powered by steam. Steam cars were very efficient, but took a long time to build up to the 600 pounds steam pressure required for operation. The boiler is under the bonnet and steam is piped to the engine located under the floor attached to the rear axle. Its tanks held 110 litres of water and 60 litres of kerosene. The advent of the electric starter motor saw the end of the steam cars in the mid-1920s. Henry Ford and the Model A changed the face of the automotive industry. One of the world's most popular cars, over 4.5 million were built between 1928 and 1932. This sedan was used to celebrate the production of 20 million Ford vehicles in the 1930s and was powered by a 2.8 four-cylinder side valve engine. The Model A succumbed to the rapid swing to V8 engines in the United States, and production ceased in 1932. One of the earliest truly international motor cars, the Austin 7 Tourer, known to many as the Chummy, was introduced in 1922 and was built in England, Germany, France, America and Japan. 300,000 were produced without any major modifications until 1937. The narrow width, 46 inches, 1.15 meters, made it easy to park, but restricted the size of the passengers. This model still has its original hood, upholstery and paintwork. It once averaged 62.5 miles to the gallon in an economy run and has a 748cc four-cylinder engine and four-wheel brakes. The 1929 smaller Rolls 20/25, one of three cars featuring the classic Flying Lady symbol of Rolls-Royce held by the museum. It's a beautiful example of the coachwork crafted by Park Ward, the English bodybuilders. When it was built, it was possible to buy the car in chassis form and to specify the bodybuilder of your choice. As the complete car, this vehicle was priced at $4,100. It has a 3.6-litre, 25-horsepower six-cylinder engine, a four-speed gearbox, and four-wheel servo-assisted brakes. The detail of the interior and bodywork is impeccable. The Bugatti was the car of the pre-war playboy. It was beautiful and it was fast. This 1938 Model T57C has an 8-cylinder, 3.2-litre supercharged engine with a maximum speed of 105 miles an hour. Ettore Bugatti is regarded as one of the greatest makers of racing, sporting and touring cars, and from 1909 till his death in 1947, he produced a succession of beautifully designed and engineered vehicles. Another car for the 1920s English playboy was the legendary 4.5-litre Bentley sports car convertible. Powered by a 4.4-litre engine producing 130 brake horsepower, this was the car that won the Brooklands 500 in 1931, clocking an average speed of 171 kilometres per hour. A magnificent example of high-performance engineering for its time, it was this model that featured in the cult BBC TV series The Avengers. But when it comes to cars with a history, it's hard to go past this 1950 heavyweight, the so-called Cadillac Gangster Special. Protected by 40mm thick laminated glass, a bomb-proof floor and armour-plated doors, the owner could feel relatively safe. It was an especially lucky find for Len Southward.
I think the luckiest one to get was the bulletproof Cadillac. And in, like, going overseas on business trips, every few years, we had called into Reno and got to know Brookers, also Harris, but family of Brookers had quite a few cars, and we were going over there and we called into Reno, and we called in on the Tuesday or Wednesday, and on the Monday, the previous Monday, they'd only decided to sell the bulletproof one. So I didn't hesitate on that. That weighs 4 tons, that one.
The car was owned by Mickey Cohen, a gangster who worked for Al Capone and Lucky Luciano. It was confiscated by the Los Angeles police in 1961, when Cohen was sentenced to 15 years prison for tax evasion.
The bullet holes, like showing on the glass, not the holes, but the dents, the police, when they took it off him, they fired the shots at it to see how good it was. They weren't fired in anger.
Amongst the collection, everyone has their own special favourite.
Well, there's the old Daimler here that was used by the Queen in the first Royal Tour. I've driven it quite a bit at different functions and even to his son's wedding and so on. And that stands out. I remember when he bought the thing, it had only had about 17,000 miles on it, if it had that. And I think the Governor General or someone had been using it. But he only paid about, £1,500. That really stands out to me.
The collection's worth millions, but the monetary value is of little importance. These vehicles are irreplaceable.
Touching wood, I wouldn't like to have to replace what we have there. And I mean, even cars that we've got in storage, if it does take you 12 months to do them up, it's still worthwhile doing.
One such irreplaceable model is this 1955 Mercedes Gullwing.
Well, another one that we're lucky to have too is really the Gullwing Mercedes, which we bought from people in Belgium. I don't know how long, it's a few years ago now. And from Gil and Mahi, they've got a collection in Belgium. And anyway, I think we paid £1,250 for it. And he said, tighten the cylinder head down because we've had the head off and done the valves, but we haven't started it up since. Well, when we started it up, it only ran on 5 cylinders. So we didn't have any compression in one, so we took the head off and had to strip the motor, and all the rings had gone through on one piston. So we wrote to them and told them what it was. And much to my surprise, they honoured the job and said, well, send a piston over in the oversize and we'll replace a set of pistons. So we got a set of brand new German male forged pistons in the £1,250 for a Gullwing Mercedes. I think we should pay them something extra today.
It's a premium collector's item throughout the world.
Well, you start in America, I think you won't see anything advertised under $200,000 today.
But even rarer and more valuable is this 1954 Maserati 250F, one of the last factory race cars made by this famous Italian manufacturer. Often described as the most beautiful post-war single-seater racing car, the 250F had many international racing successes and was the favourite of former world champion Stirling Moss. The six-cylinder 2.5-litre engine runs on high-octane avgas, which gives the car a maximum speed of 300 kilometres an hour. This is the infamous DeLorean. Built in 1981 in Northern Ireland, the DeLorean was arguably one of the safest sports cars ever produced, but the company, founded by John DeLorean, former chief designer for Pontiac, ran into financial difficulties a few months after starting production. Very few of these vehicles, which had wire-brush stainless steel bodywork and a 2.8-litre Renault V6 engine, ever reached the showroom. DeLorean was bankrupted and ended up in jail. These are but a few of the 200 motor cars that make up the collection. It's interesting to compare them with a relatively modern family motor car, with its multi-curved laminated glass, high-tensile steel bodywork, and electronic gadgetry and flexibility of seating and space. More practical, yes, but in gaining practicality, the modern car has lost the charm and adventure of the past. Will vintage collectors of the future compete passionately for cars such as this? Enthusiasts like Len Southward will be somewhat amused if they have the character to catch the imagination of collectors in the future. Modern cars seem strikingly similar to each other. They seem the victim of uniformity in design and the concept of planned obsolescence. While modern cars lose value as they leave the showroom, the price of good vintage models increases, encouraged by the growing vintage car movement. Len Southward helped found the Wellington Vintage Car Club and later became its patron. Here he enjoys a club anniversary with his wife Vera. Vera's been a great supporter of Len's activities over the years and shares Len's passion for vintage cars.
Len, can you tell us something about that first meeting and what brought it about?
Roy can tell you more than I can. He knows more about it.
What got it started, Roy?
I really don't know, but it was Charlie Maxwell and my father that I think got organised from it. And of course, the whole vintage car club, well, the vintage movement in New Zealand came about from the film Genevieve that got everyone sort of more interested again.
The lively anecdotes reveal Len's bubbling sense of humour and the high regard in which he's held by everyone in the movement.
That car hasn't got the gadget pin. The connecting rod has got the pin solid at the top, and the gadget bosses go onto the rod at the side. Then you put the piston on and put two nuts on the top. Tighten. And the good book says that if a knocking noise develops in the engine, it's as well to check the nuts on top of the piston because they might have come loose.
Everybody had to be there between 2 and 3, except our patron. And that particular night at about 7 o'clock, the boat sailed at 8, this Buick flew along the Hutt Road, still incomplete, to be loaded onto the boat minutes before 8 o'clock, when the boat sailed at 8 o'clock. Is that right, Len?
I wouldn't know anything about that.
He used to do the same thing when he took the redhead to Picton. He was working on the Tamahini on it as he went over.
Roy, Len's oldest son, like his brother John, shares their father's enthusiasm for vintage cars. Both have restored cars and contributed them to the Southward collection. Both are involved in the trust that runs the complex. In this way, the family is ensuring Len's legacy has permanence, that the exhibition hall, exhibits, restaurant and theatre that make up the complex will live on with a sound economic base. Exhibition space, restaurant, one can understand these things, but why the 474-seat theatre? The answer to this question helps us understand something of the irrepressible character of Len Southward. The whole idea sprang from the need to do justice to this Wurlitzer Hope Jones Unit Orchestra Style 260 special opus organ.
If I hadn't bought the organ, life would have been a lot simpler. But having the organ, well, it was a case of, well, what do we do with it? The idea in the first place was to get one of the ordinary street organs, just to, for a noise machine in the museum. But we had a friend who was in Kerridge Odeon, Lindsay Anderson, who's since died, and sort of in looking at the Wurlitzer and talking about it and all the rest of it, well, we just got, put a price in, and that was it. And then the price wasn't accepted, but we got a call from them, and they figured it added a bit to it, and we agreed to it. But no, that was life would have been a lot simpler without the organ.
The Wurlitzer was one of 13 built in 1929 and was originally installed in the Civic Theatre, Auckland, to provide musical entertainment to silent films. The console has 3 keyboards and a multitude of stop tabs and pedals. On either side of the theatre are large chambers housing 1,100 pipes and numerous percussion instruments that colour the music and are played from the console. The theatre is an illustration of Len Southward's ingenuity. In its theatrical mode, it has a fly tower and a large stage area and is used extensively by local music and theatrical groups and touring companies. But, and this is where Len's ingenuity comes in, within 30 minutes the sloped auditorium can be converted, with the use of hydraulics, into a level banquet or exhibition hall, suitable for occasions like Len's 80th birthday on the 20th of September 1985, when it seated over 400 guests for a celebratory dinner. Today, at 93 years of age, Sir Len Southward can look back on a life of passion and achievement. Over the years, he's led an exciting life, displayed amazing engineering and entrepreneurial skills, flirted with danger without actually seeing that it existed. He's wrestled with changes in lifestyle, developed a flourishing business, supported an array of worthy causes, and been a pioneer in the New Zealand vintage car movement. Sir Len Southward is that rare and lucky man whose work became successful enough to allow him not only to enjoy his machines, but to give support and pleasure to others. In the Southward Museum, he's created a wonderful legacy for all New Zealanders.
We were in England in 1955, I think it was, and we saw the finish of a veteran car run, and when it came back, there was a Model T Ford advertised for sale. That's the old one we've got down there, and he wanted £35 for it. What was his name?
Whittaker.
Whittaker, that's right.
Whittaker.
Neil Whittaker, that's right. I was threatening to cut his throat many times. But the silly part about that was, though, that he wanted £35 for it, and then after I listened to his tale of woe of what it had cost him and what he'd done with it, I gave him 40. You can believe that or not.
Appropriate that we gather here in this setting, for this is his gift, his legacy, both to the community and to our nation.
Sir Len Southward died on the 19th of February 2004 at the grand age of 98. To quote a close friend, his achievements were incredible, his personality unforgettable, his enthusiasm infectious, and his legacy everlasting. Many whose lives he touched joined his family at the Southward Museum Theatrette to say their fond farewells.